civil service may remain the same. This is one of the issues where I understand that, although I wasn't part of the conversation at the time, where committee members were able to demonstrate their ability to cooperate to make sure that the public has faith and confidence in the process and that it won't be abused for partisan gain.
The honourable member for Central Nova will have 2 minutes of questions coming to him when we resume. The statements by members, déclaration de députés. The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Mr. Speaker, today is National Nursing Week. Every year at this time, we celebrate and thank the hard-working nurses of Canada. This week is chosen because on May 12, 1820, Florence Nightingale was born. Now, if Florence Nightingale had been a man, she would not be remembered as the Lady of the Lamp. She'd be remembered as the father of public health care. She'd be remembered as the originator of statistics for the purpose of making an argument. She invented the pie chart in order to demonstrate to policymakers how many more soldiers were dying from infectious diseases in hospitals than were dying on the battlefield. Florence Nightingale would be remembered for many things, but as many nurses can tell us, they are often underappreciated, unrecognized, for their hard-working, life-saving work across this country. So for the men and women of the working nurses of Canada, we value you. We thank you.
Honourable member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, 40 years ago, former Speaker James Jerome launched a new program to attract smart, socially minded young Canadians from all parts of our country to the House of Commons, where they have the unique opportunity to learn the inner workings of Parliament. Les pages font honneur à leur fonction en faisant preuve.
Pages, such a rare and valued honour. It's not uncommon to see pages demonstrate their dignity, professionalism, and potential in so many ways. Since October 1978, the new program has seen 1,603 pages on the rolls, including the Honourable MP for Dollard-des-Ormeaux and the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Former pages like Mark Bosk, Katie Telford, and Réal Lewis have also put their experience to work throughout Parliament Hill.
All members to rise with me to thank and congratulate the House of Commons Page Program on 40 years of exemplary service. Thank you.
Honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, as the Shadow Minister of Health and, more importantly, the proud mother of a nurse, I'm honoured to celebrate National Nursing Week. Every day across Canada, 421,000 nurses work on the front lines of our healthcare system, giving professional, compassionate, and quality care to their patients. This year's theme, #YesThisIsNursing, was selected from over 300 submissions by students, nurses, and other Canadians. The theme is meant to speak to the diverse and ever-expanding role played by Canadian nurses. Nursing is a very hard job, but nurses conduct their duties with dignity and excellence. Thanks to the nurses from Blue Water Health and the many home care and palliative care nurses in Sarnia-Lambton. On behalf of Her Majesty's Opposition, we commend all nurses for their contribution to our nation. Thank you for your service.
The Honourable Member for Marc Aurèle Fortin. Mr. Speaker, the Eco Nature Park, which was founded in 1987, has, over the years, become essential to the people of Marc Aurèle Fortin, and it's also become a remarkable ecotourism experience. In fact, at the Dunamis Prize Gala of 2018, this park won the prize for Business of the Year in the tourism category. This prize highlights all the work done to keep the park's activities going despite flooding and the construction of a new exploration center. This summer season will be a great one as the park gradually reopens this center. I invite all of you to come and discover this beauty of nature in the heart of Laval.
Honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honoured to rise today to recognize National Nursing Week. This week we celebrate International Nurses Day, Indigenous Nurses Day, and Florence Nightingale's birthday. Nurses are consistently ranked as Canada's most respected and trusted professionals. and it's no wonder. Nurses offer us care when we're most vulnerable. They are the frontline guardians of our public health care system, and they work tirelessly to advocate for the needs of their patients. In particular, Canada's nurses have been a leading voice in the decades-long push for universal pharmacare in Canada. Mr. Speaker, nurses take care of us, and so we must take care of them. Unfortunately, over the past 2 decades, nurses have experienced an increase in workplace violence. On behalf of Canada's New Democrats, I call on all parties to work together to ensure that nurses never have to go to work fearing they will be abused. And I thank Canada's nurses for their incredible leadership in delivering better health care to all Canadians, especially my sister Cheryl, who has been nursing for 30 years.
The honourable member for Mississauga Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, there is growing concern over plastic waste in our oceans and lakes. Marine animals and birds are dying in alarming numbers as a result of suffocation and ingestion of plastics. Les déchets en plastique se rendent dans la...
Plastic waste ends up in the food chain and pollutes our water. As of today, the world has produced 8 billion tons of non-recycled plastic, and half of this over the past 13 years. 600 million pounds are floating on the surface of the oceans alone.
Climate change for opening a national consultation on this pressing challenge, and I encourage all Canadians to participate. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to hearing from the residents of Mississauga Lakeshore, and I will welcome their involvement. The time to act is now. It is the right thing to do, Mr. Speaker, and it is the only thing to do. Thank you.
The honourable member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to inform this House that for some weeks now our party has begun a Listening to Quebecers tour that will travel Quebec-wide in order to meet with people from all walks of life and get to know the issues that are dear to their heart. It didn't take long for several issues to come to the fore, but what we heard every time was the way the Liberal government neglected the regions. People feel misunderstood and abandoned. In coming months, we will crisscross Quebec, meeting with more people and looking at their ideas in order to create the prosperity for our province. People can also submit their ideas online at www.alécoutequebecois.ca. Our party recognized the Quebec nation and dealt with the fiscal imbalance. I would invite anyone who wants to know more to attend our first General Council of the Quebec wing in Saint-Hyacinthe this weekend.
For Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate His Highness the Aga Khan on his Diamond Jubilee, marking 60 years of tireless leadership of the Shia Ismaili Muslim community globally. On May 1st, I had the pleasure of welcoming him to Ottawa as he celebrates his Diamond Jubilee. His Highness promotes the shared values of pluralism, justice, compassion, and of service to others. As Prime Minister Chrétien stated, we may think it is the Canadian way, but it is in short supply in today's world, and therefore it makes the work of the Aga Khan indispensable. His Highness keeps persevering, undiminished and undeterred, and we need his passion and his message more than ever. Thank you, Your Highness, for walking alongside Canada and helping us meet our SDG goals. Welcome to Canada. It is our great privilege to celebrate your Diamond Jubilee. Jubilee Mubarak.
The honourable member for Hamilton West and Castor Dundas.
Mr. Speaker, we are reminded this week to speak openly and frankly about mental health. It is an issue that can impact any one of us at any age, but today I'd like to speak about the impact on our youth. As a chaplain, I've witnessed firsthand the devastating impact on mental health challenges. It was a privilege to support hundreds of youth as they journeyed through very dark days. Seeing our young people face these challenges is absolutely heartbreaking. They feel alone and they do not feel understood. Mr. Speaker, we're working on changing that. I rise today hopeful as our government recognizes the importance of these issues. We will continue to work to remove the stigma and to meet the challenges for all those suffering. My message to all our youth struggling with mental health issues today is simple. We are with you, and we want you well.
The honourable member for Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, it is my honour to rise in this House today to recognize the 50th anniversary of the Faculty of Law at the University of Windsor. As an alumnus of Windsor Law, I can attest that the 3 years I spent there were among the best of my life. The Windsor Faculty of Law welcomed its first class in 1968. I began my own legal career a few years later when I enrolled as a law student at the university in 1974. And I will always be grateful for the quality of education I received there and for the tremendous opportunities that those years of study presented throughout my career. Today, Windsor Law School has an enrollment of 700 students with 32 full-time professors. Their vision is to inspire a community that is passionate about achieving a more just and equitable world. The foundations those students will receive will do just that, and our global community will be better off for it. I am honored to congratulate Windsor Law School on its 50th anniversary. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the members of the Canadian Communications System Alliance, or the CCSA, who were in Ottawa last week speaking about important issues related to telecommunications in Canada. The CCSA represent more than 110 independent companies, and they provide internet, TV, telephone, and cell services across Canada. They serve hundreds of thousands of customers, generally outside urban markets from coast to coast to coast. They're not the big communication companies. They include community and cooperatives, family businesses, companies owned by Indigenous peoples. They work and they invest in their own communities. CCSA members connect Canadians who otherwise might not have access to critical communication services. They invest in infrastructure in areas where large companies do not. And in rural areas, CCSA members are sometimes the only source of those essential communication services. In my riding of the Long Range Mountains, I have 3 members: the Benoit Brothers Contracting in Stephenville, Burgeo Broadcasting System in Burgeo, and Ramia Broadcasting in Ramia. These businesses do so much for their locally.
The honourable member for Avignon, Namatis, Matan, Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, there are extremely talented young people in my region, and I'd like to single out the exceptional accomplishment of a photography student at Matan Cégep. Samuel Bolduc was chosen Student Photographer of the Year at the Sony World Photography Awards 2018, one of the most prestigious in the world. He is the first Canadian to win this prize. All of Matan is proud of Samuel Bolduc. This international recognition is remarkable, but well and truly deserved. For this young artist who is overflowing with creativity, Mr. Speaker, it is my great pleasure to congratulate Samuel Bolduc in this House. This prestigious recognition will, I'm sure, catapult this young man into the ranks of the best and launch an extraordinary career. Bravo.
Mr. Speaker, as Conservatives, we believe in fighting criminals who commit violent crimes. We believe in upholding victims and their families and supporting law-abiding citizens. But, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are more interested in doing just the opposite. With Bill C-75, the Liberals are proposing to reduce penalties for serious crimes, crimes such as assault with a weapon, participating or leaving Canada to participate in terrorist activities, and participating in the activities of organized crime. Mr. Speaker, this bill only weakens our justice system and sends the wrong message to Canadians. As Conservatives, Canadians can be assured that we will always stand up for the protection of law-abiding citizens and will put the rights of victims first. That's why, when we were in government, we passed tough on crime legislation, including the Victims' Bill of Rights, which that party voted for. But unlike the Liberals, we put our words into action.
Honourable member for Cambridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was happy to welcome the Prime Minister, the Premier, and the Minister of Innovation, Science, Economic Development to Cambridge for an announcement last Friday. $110 million was announced in federal funding, along with $110 million provincially that will complement the $1.4 billion investment by Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada for their plants in Cambridge and Woodstock. This funding will go towards a new advanced hybrid manufacturing platform and will provide 450 new jobs, 1,000 new co-op positions, and protect 8,000 direct manufacturing jobs. Cambridge and Waterloo region are known for our high-tech sector, innovation, and advanced manufacturing capabilities. For over 30 years, Toyota in Cambridge continues to find success in the ever-changing automotive field while providing stable and good-paying jobs. Thank you to everyone who made this announcement possible.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, my NDP colleagues and I have been asking for immediate and effective action on the opioid crisis over and over again. 37 families throughout my riding of Essex are mourning the losses of those they love from opioid overdoses. Our losses are more than 1.5 times higher than the provincial average. Families continue to struggle, desperate to get their loved ones the help they need to overcome their addiction. Sadly, to date, the government has failed to provide real leadership on this crisis. Not only have they chosen not to declare this a national public health emergency, but they've failed to hold opioid manufacturers to account for their role in this epidemic. Today, I stand with my NDP colleagues and call on the government to launch a criminal investigation into the role played by drug manufacturers in fueling and greatly profiting from the opioid crisis. This government must also pursue substantial compensation from these manufacturers for the cost of addiction to our public health system and communities. This crisis takes a heavy emotional toll on families, friends, neighbours and loved ones. Immediate action is needed before any more lives are lost to this deadly.
Honourable member for Banff Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, we all know the Liberal government's record on electoral reform, and it isn't pretty. They have continuously tried to use every trick in the book to quash opposition debate and to tip the electoral scales in their favour. They've tried to quell debate by introducing a motion that would allow unprecedented and undemocratic Liberal control over the ins and outs of parliamentary business. They broke their promise to Canadians on electoral reform when they couldn't push through an electoral system that experts said would have only benefited the Liberal Party. And they've tried to force through changes in committee that would have had the Liberals skip work on Fridays and had the Prime Minister only show up to work one day a week. And then they've used the Ministers and Prime Minister's office for partisan cash for access fundraisers. And now they're trying to force through changes in Bill C-76 that would make up to 1 million votes susceptible to fraud in the next election. Don't the Liberals know that Canadians can see through their tricks and simply don't trust them to make electoral changes that are in the benefit of Canadian democracy and not just the Liberal Party?
The honourable member for Fundy Royal.
Mr. Speaker, it's difficult to be here today as my heart is in New Brunswick, where thousands have been impacted by flooding. During times of struggle, you see the hearts of a community, their true resilience and resourcefulness. This past weekend, I worked alongside of neighbours packing sandbags, saw others showing up with a truck, a pump, a shovel, a container of cookies, or their own two hands to help to try to protect memories and possessions. My New Brunswick colleagues and I would like to thank the tireless work of these volunteers, the emergency measures teams, first responders, and corporate citizens. Also the commitment of the Municipal Works Department's provincial employees, Premier Gallant, MLAs, mayors, and councillors. The Government of Canada stands ready to help the province of New Brunswick. The Canadian Coast Guard has been deployed, and we are thankful for the protection they are providing on the water and in the air. Mr. Speaker, I witnessed hundreds of local heroes at work this past weekend, and I've never been prouder to represent the people of New Brunswick here in this House.
Questions orales, oral questions. L'honorable député de Richmond.
The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, no one but a Liberal would boast about taxes. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has revealed that the carbon tax will slow down growth in the GDP, will lead to a loss of $10 billion in the economy, and none of the Liberals on their benches is able to say what the impact will be on the environment. This is an economic and environmental policy that doesn't hold water. The Prime Minister is going to be seeking out even more money from Canadians' pockets. So my question for him is, how much will this tax cost Canadian families? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, contrary to the previous Harper government, we collaborate with the provinces. That's why we're establishing, along with them, ways of putting a price on the carbon. That is how we will be working on it in the fall to bring into force this new measure by January 1st. We have a great deal of work to do between now and then, but I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that we're going to be taking tangible action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to create economic growth. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Here's the reality, Mr. Speaker. This government has racked up deficits without a plan to return to a balanced budget. 80% of Canadian families are paying more taxes today than under the previous Conservative government. The Liberals, imagine this, they've even cancelled the tax credit for people using public transit. And now with the carbon tax, the government's going to be taking $10 billion out of the Canadian economy. So my question for the Prime Minister is simple. How much will it cost Canadian families? How much will they have to pay because of this new carbon tax? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are out in left field. We committed to Canadians that we would help the middle class, and Canadians had a choice in the last election between austerity and cuts proposed by the government and investments and assistance for the middle class proposed by the Liberals. Canadians made the right choice because we cut taxes for the middle class and we increased them for the wealthiest 1%. We cut taxes for small businesses. We're currently delivering a benefit for children that is helping 9 families out of 10 and leaving.
Mr. Speaker, our millionaire trust fund prime minister spent much of his life living in government-owned mansions, and now we learn that he has actually 2 mansions, one to prepare his meals and another for him to eat them in. At the same time, he says that British Columbians who are suffering under $1.60 litre gasoline prices need to make better choices. Doesn't he think it's just a little bit hypocritical to charge more taxes to middle-class Canadians while he lives in the lap of luxury at their expense?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to see the Conservatives bring up British Columbia because that's a jurisdiction that for almost 10 years has had a price on carbon pollution that has led to concrete positive outcomes in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and has created amongst the strongest growth across the country in the economy. That's demonstration that taking real action on climate change, which is something that they refused to do for 10 years and continue to refuse to do, is actually the way to create a strong economy and better opportunities for all Canadians.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, British Columbia is also the place with the highest gas prices, in part due to the existing carbon tax, a tax this Prime Minister wants to further raise. He promised not to raise taxes on the middle class, and he promised openness by default. He's managed to break both of those promises with the carbon tax cover-up. Not only has he already raised taxes, income taxes on 80% of middle-class Canadians, he now wants to charge them a carbon tax and cover up how much it will cost them. Why doesn't he keep his promise, end the carbon tax cover-up, and finally give Canadians a break?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think I'll have enough of 30 seconds to correct everything the honourable member got wrong in that, but let me start on one. Mr. Speaker, we lowered taxes for the middle class and raised them on the wealthiest 1%, which that party voted against. Mr. Speaker, we have made our commitments to invest in the middle class and people working hard to join it, and it has delivered the fastest growth in the G7 last year. It has led to the creation of 600,000 and more good jobs and the lowest unemployment in 40 years. Our plan is working. Their plan for austerity wouldn't.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, Mr. Speaker, here are the facts. They raised payroll taxes, which target disproportionately middle and low-income people. They are imposing a carbon tax, which disproportionately targets middle and low-income people. They've taken away the transit tax credit, which has the effect of raising taxes on middle and lower-income people who make the responsible and green decision to take transit. They have raised taxes, and they have targeted those tax increases at those who can least afford to pay. With all these tax increases, why won't he just admit that he broke his promise to Canadian middle-class taxpayers?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, so many things wrong with that list of statements. Again, I'm going to focus on just one. The promise we made to invest in the middle class and people working hard to join it. We lowered taxes for the middle class, raised them on the wealthiest 1%. We lowered small business taxes. We delivered a Canada Child benefit that helps 9 out of 10 families and is lifting hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. And we're moving forward on delivering a Canada Workers benefit that's going to help low-income workers actually remain and get into the workforce. These are the kinds of things we're doing to focus on the middle class.
The Honourable Member for Muskenejet-Témiscouata-Les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, as of December 31st, December 2020, Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, and the British Virgin Islands will have to publicly declare the identity of owners of corporations registered there. Last Tuesday, MPs in the UK had the courage to vote for transparency in the fight against tax havens. At the same time, Canada is simply watching things happen around it. Canada is at the back of the pack when it comes to financial transparency in the G20. Will the government follow the example set in the UK and take steps to fight tax havens in this way? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, knowing with certainty who owns what corporation will help put an end to the use of corporations to prevent money laundering. We have established a bilateral system and the exchange of tax information with our international partners. We have agreed with the provinces and territories on the importance of knowing who owns what corporation. This agreement is a first important step to prevent the abusive use of corporations to evade taxes and for other criminal activities. The Honourable Member for Muskenejet-Témiscouata-Les-Basques.
Canada is actually a laughing stock in the world about tax evasion. Why? Because it's possible to register a corporation in Canada without disclosing the name of its owners or its administrators. While the Government of Canada seems satisfied with this lack of accountability, the British Parliament is taking action for greater financial transparency in its overseas territory. I challenge the Prime Minister to go from words to action. Enough with the banalities. Will the Prime Minister start tightening the rules regarding the registration of businesses in Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, this government knows that knowing clearly who owns which company will help us stop those who use corporations to evade taxes, launder money, finance terrorism, and trade in dangerous goods like firearms. We have already developed an extensive network of bilateral tax treaties and tax information exchange agreements with international partners. We reached an agreement with provincial and territorial finance ministers to ensure we know who owns which corporations. This agreement is an important first step that will help prevent companies from concealing ownership information in order to facilitate tax evasion, tax avoidance.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, the uncertainty that Canadian businesses and workers are feeling has reached a tipping point. We are now hearing from media leaks that NAFTA countries are aiming to sign an agreement in principle that focuses on the auto sector before the end of this month. But rumors are not enough. Can anyone even tell us what an agreement in principle is? People need to know that their jobs are safe. When will the Prime Minister tell Canadians when a fair deal will be reached, or will they continue with the same level of secrecy on trade agreements that we saw with the Conservatives?
Prime Minister.
I'm happy to answer the member opposite's question on what an agreement in principle is. It's great to see them taking an interest in trade deals because we know that trade is good for growing the economy. When we actually move forward in an agreement on principle, it's because we have gotten the broad strokes agreed to on the trade agreement, and it means we'll be able to move into the legal scrub, which is the next step to make sure that they all connect properly. We are working very, very hard on signing and improving NAFTA, and we're glad that the NDP is taking an interest.
Député de Jonquière.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Now, maybe this version of French will be understood more clearly. On the weekend, we've learned that the minister is optimistic about reaching a satisfactory agreement on NAFTA with the United States. Workers are facing uncertainty about potential taxes on steel and aluminum. Despite our repeated calls for transparency, the government has remained silent on the subject. Hope is all good and well, but results are far better. When will the government show some transparency and reassure communities with a permanent exemption on these taxes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. For months, Mr. Speaker, we have worked with our partners, our NAFTA partners, to improve and to negotiate a new agreement that will be better for workers in all three countries. We know that we need certainty for workers, for investors, for corporations, for travelers, and that is what we're working on. We understand that this is a long process. There are challenges with the U.S. administration, but we are focusing on the work that needs to be done to defend the interests of Canadians, for corporations, and to create economic growth for all three countries.
Opposition House Leader.
Does the Prime Minister have any idea of the difficult choices most families already have to make when it comes to how they spend their money? Let me give him an example of a family. Jacob has to be driven to soccer, Emma to piano, and then little Noah has a medical condition, and he has to be taken to the doctor 2 hours away once a week. Can the Prime Minister tell parents like these just which child they're supposed to say no to in order to pay for his carbon tax?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians know that climate change is real, and Canadians expect us to take strong action. And that is exactly what we are doing. I truly wish that for the sake of our children that climate change was not a partisan issue, but the Conservatives have clearly made it one.
Shame on you.
We will continue to do what we've been doing for 2 years, taking practical, cost-effective measures to tackle climate change, to grow a clean economy, and to create good jobs. That is what Canadians expect, Mr. Speaker, and that is exactly what we are doing.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling every day to make ends meet, and this Prime Minister has absolutely no idea of the struggle that they're facing. While he gets his taxpayer-funded meals delivered to his taxpayer-funded home using taxpayer-funded fuel, he tells Canadians they are supposed to make better choices. So again, I ask the Prime Minister, if he can, from his ivory tower, please tell Canadians what better choices they're supposed to make to pay for his useless carbon tax.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, let's set the record straight. 80% of Canadians live in a jurisdiction that have a price on carbon pollution, and these 4 provinces had the best economic growth last year. Our government is taking action by putting a price on carbon pollution to grow the economy in cleaner ways. The Harper Conservatives think it's easier to stay silent and do nothing on climate change. They continue to ignore science and the reality unfolding in their own backyards. In 2015, Canadians asked for a change. Doing nothing on climate change like the Conservatives did for 10 years is not an option.
The Honourable Member for Leadville-Aubinière. Mr. Speaker, the carbon tax will have detrimental repercussions in Canada and will represent some $10 billion. This new tax, Mr. Speaker, is simply being used to pay for the Liberals' deficit. How much will Canadian families have to pay on a yearly basis because of the mismanagement by this Prime Minister? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians have asked for action on climate change. They did ask for those for 10 years under the Harper government. We have taken steps. We have put in place a price on pollution to grow the economy in a clean way. This will help us to fight climate change, to reduce emissions, and to put money in Canadians' pockets, and to support middle-class jobs. Everyone knows that the Leader of the Opposition's refusal shows that Stephen Harper's Conservatives still have no plan for climate change.
For Langley Aldergrove.
Mr. Speaker, most Canadian seniors live on a fixed income. They plan ahead and they spend their money very carefully so that they can make ends meet. The Liberals' carbon tax is increasing the cost of gas, home heating, groceries, and the other basic essentials that form a large part of seniors' budgets. Seniors can't afford the Prime Minister's ever-increasing taxes. Why is the Prime Minister targeting fixed and low-income seniors with his carbon tax?
Exactly.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians know that we can fight climate change and grow our economy at the same time. That is what our plan is doing, and it's working. Canada's emissions are dropping while our economy grows. In the past 2 years, hardworking Canadians created nearly 600,000 new jobs. Unemployment rates are near the lowest levels in more than 40 years. Since 2016, Canada has led all G7 countries in economic growth. Putting a price on pollution will make Canada's economy stronger over time, help create new economic opportunities and good middle-class jobs.
Honourable member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has gone too far. He's forcing Canadians to make an impossible choice. Gas prices in BC are skyrocketing, making families choose between buying gas or paying for groceries. The Prime Minister says that's a good thing, that Canadians should drive less. He's punishing ordinary, hardworking Canadians. Will he finally tell us how much his carbon tax will cost the average Canadian family?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 4 provinces pricing pollution, British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario and Quebec, led the country in economic growth last year, showing that the environment and the economy go hand in hand. BC put a price on carbon pollution more than a decade ago. Since 2008, BC's direct price on carbon has reduced emissions by 5 to 15%, according to experts at the University of Ottawa and Duke University. Meanwhile, provincial real GDP grew by more than 17% in the same period of time, demonstrating that action on climate change and economic growth are absolute imperatives and they go together.
Honourable member for Abbotsford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, is the Prime Minister listening? Why won't he answer? His government is forcing Canadian families to choose between taking kids to hockey and paying their heating bills. We've seen the mess the Wynne Liberals have made in Ontario. Families unable to heat their homes and pay their mortgages. Single mothers, seniors, and Canadian families are all suffering. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister won't feel the impact of his tax hike. Why? He's got a trust fund. Why won't he tell us how much his carbon tax will cost the average Canadian family?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a member of Parliament from British Columbia, my honourable colleagues should know better. In British Columbia, we've had a price on carbon pollution since 2008 as a result of the leadership of Premier Campbell. The revenues associated with that were returned to families in the form of tax reductions and rebates. Low-income families in British Columbia were absolutely no worse off, and we had a price on pollution which incented good choices with respect to efficiency and drove clean economy and the development of the most robust clean technology sector in all of Canada.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hilaire. Mr. Speaker, here's a true story reported in the Ottawa Citizen. A former Liberal strategist appointed lobbyist by Google. A Google executive became Chief of Staff to the Minister of Heritage. And another former Liberal strategist, today Chief Lobbyist for Facebook, forgot to declare a number of meetings with the Minister of Finance. Who said Ottawa is a boring place? It seems like the House of Cards here. Is this cronyism between the web giants and the Liberals preventing them from forcing the web giants to pay their fair share, by any chance? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, my colleague opposite knows that the majority of Canadians uses digital platforms in this context. I met with the people in charge of the large platforms as part of Creative Canada. We are attempting to protect and to promote our culture on the web. She has always been completely transparent with respect to her former employer, even with the Ethics Commissioner.
James Bay.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Bank of Canada is warning that the power of the U.S. data oligarchies is so great it's now threatening the competitiveness of the Canadian economy. This, as the U.S. and the U.K. talk about regulating these corporate giants who have the power to undermine democratic elections. Meanwhile, the Liberal Party have put a for sale sign on the Prime Minister's door for all the data lobbyists who just all happen to have Liberal Party passes. So once again, why is this government putting the interests of giant data and their Liberal Party insiders ahead of the interests of Canadian citizens, consumers, and Canadian culture?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, we've been very clear when it comes to data breaches, and privacy concerns to take aggressive action. That's why we put forward regulations to protect Canadians under the Personal Information Protection and Electronics Document Act, called PIPEDA. This applies to private entities, and if there's any stolen or lost data, they must report that to the individual and to the Privacy Commissioner. Failure to do so will lead to an infraction amount, a fine of up to $100,000, Mr. Speaker. So we've been very clear about taking action on this file, and we'll continue to do so, Mr. Speaker.
Député de Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles.
The Honourable Member for... Mr. Speaker, on April 27th, the federal court stated that refugees can seek asylum in Canada if they're afraid of if they fear being deported from the United States. And this runs counter to the logic of the Third Safe Country Agreement that maintains the U.S. respects international laws on refugees, including the principle on non-refoulement. Does the government agree with the court that the United States is not a safe country for asylum seekers, or will he do what needs to be done, and by that I mean appeal this decision? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are making some very worrisome comments. They are perpetuating this myth that people are trying to sidestep lines, jump the queue, when he knows that asylum seekers are treated differently from other asylum seekers. They are the ones that propose the ridiculous idea of creating one border entry which would be 9,000 kilometers long with fewer security officers. Whereas they are saying this, what we're doing is protecting the security and safety of Canadians and ensuring that... The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, it's disappointing because the Minister is off track. He isn't answering the question that I asked. It was a very simple one. Now, this morning, the Minister of Immigration informed Canadians that he has nothing new to deal with these illegal migrants. The Liberals never talk about compassion for real refugees in UN camps. They never talk about compassion for immigrants who enter Canada legally and have to wait longer. The Minister is going to great lengths to accommodate these illegal refugees and forgetting about the ones suffering in refugee camps. Will the government show some leadership and put the issue of asylum seekers on the agenda for the G7?
Mr. Transport.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives like talk about security, but they cut $390 million from the Border Services Agency. They claim to be compassionate, but they're the ones that cut medical assistance to families and children from people who came to Canada as refugees. Their hypocritical approach of pretending to be concerned about refugees is false. Canadians need to know that.
Député de Richmond-Arthabasca.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca.
Richmond Centre, I'm sorry. Richmond.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Centre.
Truly vulnerable refugees in the world don't have the means to fly to the United States and sneak across the Canadian border. Many languish in refugee camps, waiting in a 45,000-case private sponsorship backlog. They can't jump the line. Yet, the Liberals are allowing others to do just that. How is that fair or compassionate?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Speaker, the Harper Conservatives wouldn't know what compassion is if it hit them in the face. Mr. Speaker, this is the party. The Harper Conservatives cut $400 million from border security operations, and they pretend to care about the border. The Harper Conservatives kept families apart, spouses, live-in caregiver programs, children, and others in queues. We inherited a huge ballooning backlog under the privately sponsored refugees. They have no idea what compassion is about. They didn't care about Yazidi refugees, Mr. Speaker.
Order. 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 It is not helpful to order in this place to suggest that people here aren't honorable or lack compassion. We should be careful in our commentary. And of course that goes both ways, but I ask members to be cautious and careful in the words they use. and in particular the Minister on this occasion, I'd ask him not to use that kind of a suggestion in the future. The Honourable Member for Calgary, Nose Hill.
The Prime Minister has issued 12,500 expedited work permits for people who have entered Canada illegally from the United States in the last year alone. There are hundreds of thousands of people, including new Canadians, who are out of work or could be out of work and are trying to make ends meet. Planned orderly migration grows our economy. What is happening at the Quebec-U.S. border is not planned, orderly, fair, or compassionate. Why won't the Prime Minister close the loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
The House of Conservatives never understood a very simple thing about immigration, that investment follows talent. They didn't make the necessary investments in immigration processing. Let's stick to the numbers. Parents and grandparents had to wait years under that party to come to Canada. Spouses and children were kept apart for years under that party. Privately sponsored refugees were kept for years apart under that party. We inherited a 50,000 backlog in privately sponsored refugees. And yes, they lack compassion because they cut refugee health care, Mr. Speaker. Here, here.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, 3 ministers held press conferences this morning on asylum seekers, but they really did not have much new to say. The Minister of Public Safety announced that Canadian legislation continues to apply. The Minister of Immigration said that he plans to travel to Nigeria, but there was nothing to tackle the heart of the matter. Can the government stop dithering and finally suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. Mr. Speaker, we announced new measures this morning during our press conference. We spoke with our American partners about the matter of asylum seekers coming from Nigeria with visas. That's an important file because it's the greatest number of asylum seekers right now. We also gave more details about the triage of people arriving at the Quebec border and also spoke of measures that we plan to take to study additional requests of funding from the province of Quebec. We're doing all kinds of things right now. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, that's far from all kinds of things. Since January 2017, we've been talking about this.
They can talk about all the things that are happening, but the problem persists, and what we're seeing is people who, in one case, are trying to flee the death, torture, and poor living conditions, and in another case, fleeing anti-refugee sentiment that exists even in places like the White House. So, Mr. Speaker, if the government wants to be welcoming to refugees, and they want it to happen in the proper way at official border crossings, why don't they do the easy thing and suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Speaker, the Safe Third Country Agreement is premised on the notion of better management of asylum seekers between Canada and the United States. It's based on a principle supported by the United Nations Refugee Agency that refugees should claim asylum in the first safe country that they land in. This is so the United Nations Refugee Agency monitors both Canada and the United States in terms of their compliance with the Safe Third Country Agreement. I didn't think I would live to see the day when the NDP would disagree with the United Nations.
The Honourable Member for West Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week marks Mental Health Awareness Week. It is an important moment to take collective action to reduce stigma and, above all, to encourage our friends and family to talk about it openly. Poor mental health and mental illness are more prevalent than many people think. In fact, 1 out of every 3 Canadians will have a mental illness in their lifetime. My question is for the Minister of Health. What action is this government taking regarding mental health for Canadians?
I'd like to thank my colleague from West Nova for his important question and his leadership on this file. With regards to mental health, I'm proud that our government has invested more than $5 billion to ensure for as many as 500,000 young Canadians across the country will receive mental health services. Additionally, through Budget 2018, we are also investing over $19 million to support at-risk youth to ensure that they have more culturally appropriate programs. Mental health, Mr. Speaker, affects us all. This is why, during Mental Health Awareness Week, I challenge everyone to help us continue to overcome stigma and get loud about what mental health means to you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Banff-Airdrie.
The Liberals got caught selling access to the Prime Minister at $1,500 per person events. And in spite of this, they've been out fundraised by the Conservative Party. And now they're trying to tip the electoral scales in their favour. Under their new legislation, the Liberals are limiting the amount that political parties can spend of their own Canadian-raised funds, but allowing foreign funds to flow freely into Canada to influence our elections. So when will the Liberals do something to actually strengthen the integrity of our electoral system instead of trying to only benefit themselves?
President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, C-76 will actually protect the integrity of our electoral system. It will also help protect the personal and private information of Canadians, and it will encourage and help more Canadians to participate in the electoral process and to vote in elections. Beyond that, Mr. Speaker, there are actually measures in C-76 that will ensure that foreign money is not spent in Canadians' electoral system. Mr. Speaker, we would urge the Conservatives to support C-76 and to help move forward with an even stronger electoral system for Canadians.
I remind honourable members that the time to speak is when they have the floor and not at other times. And the member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound would do well to heed what I just said and not be speaking while I'm trying to point out you shouldn't be interrupting around here. Honourable member for Banff-Airdrie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't think anyone's believing any of that. Now, it turns out the Liberals actually want stricter ID rules for buying marijuana than they do to protect the integrity of our elections. Nearly 1 million erroneous voter information cards were mailed out during the 2015 election, but the Liberals want to use them as a proof of address. So why do the Liberals want people to show ID to buy marijuana, but not in order to vote?
President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives were warned by hundreds of experts that eliminating the voter information cards and vouching would actually have a negative impact and reduce Canadians' participation in the election. In fact, after the election, Stats Canada made it very clear that about 170,000 Canadians didn't get to vote because of those Conservative changes. We believe very strongly, as does the Elections Canada, that the electoral system is stronger when more Canadians vote in elections, and we will continue to encourage exactly that.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, all Canadians recognize that the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister have no credibility when it comes to talk about voter reform because they abandoned their electoral promise. And yet the ideas that they're putting forward, such as to withdraw the use of voter ID cards and just use the voter ID card as acceptable, it doesn't work because in 2015, over 1 million voter cards had mistakes on them. Why are they playing with democracy? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, we are determined to increase the trust and participation of Canadians to our democratic process. This legislation will make elections more accessible. It will make the electoral process more transparent and help political parties better protect Canadians' privacy. We're looking forward to working with all members for a more open and transparent system.
Louis Saint Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Those 1 million cards were no good, and he thinks it's a good idea to use just those? It doesn't make any sense. And not only that, but they're allowing foreign funds to flow into Canada. It makes no sense. Canadian elections belong to Canadians. Why is the Prime Minister allowing foreign entities to send millions to Canada? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Earlier in question period, the Conservatives were questioning why we would require Canadians to have ID cards to purchase marijuana. Mr. Speaker, let's be very clear. One of our focuses is not just in terms of legalizing, but also to heavily regulate marijuana. We want to keep it out of the hands of young people. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this. But, Mr. Speaker, we actually think it's a good thing for Canadians to vote, but not necessarily a good thing for young Canadians to buy marijuana, Mr. Speaker. Where are the Conservatives coming from on this?
The Honourable Member for London. Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, Canada Post profits surged in 2017 a whopping 78%. Business is booming, so it's time to make investments that ensure healthy profits are there for the future. Postal workers' pensions must be fully supported. Pay equity issues must be settled. And now is the time to implement postal banking. Will the minister commit to supporting Canada Post, make the investments in the workforce, and expand services so it remains profitable for years in the future?
Honourable Minister of Public Services.
Mr. Speaker, our government put forth a new vision for Canada Post that puts service to Canadians first. We have implemented a new leadership model. We've got a new chair of the board. Last Friday, we announced 5 appointments to the board of directors, Mr. Speaker. We are encouraging innovation. We are encouraging creativity. We know that Canadians value Canada Post, and we will continue to let the leadership do their job and share our vision for a strong and forward-looking Canada Post. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Hundreds of thousands of farmed salmon escape once, and the state of Washington bans open net farms. In Canada, BC coastal First Nations occupy 2 salmon farms for over 200 days, and the minister does nothing. On top of that, disgusting video footage shows virus-laden fish blood spewing into wild salmon migration route and ancient glass sponges smothered by salmon farm waste, and he still does nothing. Finally, last week, the Environment Commissioner issues a scathing report. When will the minister stand up for wild salmon and transition this industry to safe, land-based closed containment?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for his question and remind him that our government is committed to protecting Canada's aquatic ecosystems and fisheries through science-based decision-making. We welcome all of the scientific reports, including one that was done today, released today, the Strategic Salmon Health Initiative. And all of these scientific reports, Mr. Speaker, are informing the decisions that our government is making with respect to protecting wild salmon and ecosystems, not only in British Columbia, but right across the country. And we'll continue to do everything necessary to ensure this is the case.
Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, recently released court documents show that the Minister of Fisheries personally intervened in the Arctic surf clam process. In his own handwriting, scrawled across an official document, he ordered his officials to, and I quote, take next steps with 5 nations and ensure that additional Indigenous communities are quickly confirmed. This proves that the minister knew that 5 nations didn't have the required Indigenous partners, but he approved their bid anyways. Why?
Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, our government decided, as the previous Conservative government had, that it was important to bring a new entrant into this lucrative offshore fishery. We thought it was important, Mr. Speaker, to include Indigenous communities in a historic access to this important offshore fishery. That's why our government retained a proposal that included Indigenous communities from 5 provinces, 4 in Atlantic Canada and in Quebec, in a partnership with a business with experience in offshore fisheries, and we think this will bring economic benefits to Indigenous people and Atlantic Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, the same court documents reveal the Liberal Connected Premium Seafoods owns 75% of 5 Nations clam. The minister has said that this is all about providing the best economic value for the most people. If Edgar Sampson, the brother of a Liberal MP, owns 75% of the benefits, where are they truly flowing? Why is the minister putting people out of work in Grand Bank to line the pockets of his Liberal friends and family?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, as I said a moment ago, the previous Conservative government actually omitted entirely to include Indigenous communities in access to this historic fishery. Our government didn't make that mistake. And, Mr. Speaker, our government accepts that if 5 Indigenous leaders work together with a non-Indigenous business and come to an arrangement that they have said publicly is fair and will benefit their communities, we listen to those Indigenous leaders, Mr. Speaker, something the previous government forgot to do.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, the fix was in. The minister gave millions of dollars worth of fish quota to Liberal Party insiders. He claimed it was about reconciliation. How well did that work? He has the First Nations taking him to court. This is an insult to reconciliation. Oopsie. He's pitting one First Nations against another after a sham of a bidding process. What will the Indigenous Affairs Minister do to make sure that there's fairness for all bidders, not just party inside donors?
The Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, our decision to increase Indigenous participation in fisheries is in line with the commitment of our government to renew our relationship between Canada and the United Nations and the First Nations. Granting them access to the Arctic surf clam broadens the distribution of advantages from this public resource and represents an important step towards reconciliation, and we are very proud of it.
Humber River Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, the new Commissioner of the RCMP, Brenda Lucki, has started her role as the 24th Commissioner for the RCMP. And most importantly, she'll be the first woman to assume that role in a permanent facet. Commissioner Lucki has been a Mountie for over 32 years, brings a wealth of experience with the job, has worked throughout Canada and with the United Nations. I'd like to, through you, Mr. Speaker, ask the Minister of Public Safety, what are his expectations and goals for our new Commissioner?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Humber Black Creek for the question and for her long-standing advocacy for RCMP members who have faced harassment in the workplace. As outlined in the mandate letter we released today, preventing harassment will be a major focus for the new Commissioner, as will strengthening relationships with Indigenous people and modernizing governance. And of course, priority number one is always public safety. I look forward to Commissioner Lucki's first appearance at a standing committee of the House of Commons later this afternoon.
Honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Mr. Speaker, in 2016, the Liberals signed an agreement with the municipality of Meaford for the lease of the local harbour. It states the municipality is not responsible for major repairs. However, after a major storm caused damage, the Liberals have told the municipality that they're on the hook for the cost of repairs. Now, in a letter, all DFO can say is we are unable to come to an agreement with the town. Well, Mr. Speaker, they did agree on an arrangement 2 years ago. When will the minister do the right thing, honour this agreement, and pay for the repairs at the Meaford Harbour?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague from Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, for the question. I had the opportunity to discuss this very matter with him when I was before the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. As Mr. Speaker, as all colleagues know, small craft harbour infrastructure is extremely important for our government. I've taken note of my colleagues' concerns, Mr. Speaker, I hope in the coming weeks to have some very good news for that honourable member and that important community.
The honourable member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, we found out that Via Rail is going to launch a request for proposals to renew its fleet for the Quebec-Windsor corridor. It's good news, but in spite of an investment of $1.5 billion in public funds, the government does not plan to set a job creation requirement here at home for the successful bidder. Many countries impose conditions for community benefits when granting public transportation contracts, but this government is asking for none of that. Does the minister plan to set requirements for community benefits for this contract valued at $1.5 billion of public funds? The Minister of Transportation. Mr. Speaker, the answer is simple. We have federal level requirements. When there is a federal contract for the purchase of new equipment, and we have to respect NAFTA as well as international obligations that we have with World Trade Organizations. When we set out a request for proposals, we have to specify that a certain percentage be created. We cannot specify a certain percentage of jobs to be created in Canada. The honourable member from Madawaska-Restigouche. Mr. Speaker, it's the North American Occupational Safety and Health Week, which is an opportunity to raise awareness among employers, employees, stakeholders, and the general public about the importance of preventing injuries and illnesses at work. Every day in my riding, Canadians go to work hoping to come home safe and sound. Can the minister tell us what our government... Can the Minister of Labour tell us what the government is doing to encourage the prevention of occupational illness and injury? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from Madawaska, Restigouche, for his question and continued commitment to Canadian workers. Our government takes the health and safety of Canadian workers very seriously. We've strengthened the Canada Labour Code to bring worker protection in line with current realities. We introduced Bill C-65, putting an end to harassment and violence in federally regulated workplaces, and we amended asbestos standards so Canadians aren't exposed at work. This year's theme of the North American Occupational Safety and Health Week is making safety a habit. As Canadians, let's do our part and make
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, I do not understand the Prime Minister, and yet he gave his word to Quebec last January. The Coast Guard's fleet is aging. Ferries are stuck in the ice. Saguenay's economy is being threatened by Liberal inaction. What is the Prime Minister waiting for to grant the 4 icebreaker contracts to Davie Shipyard, including the Polar-class vessel? When will the Prime Minister stop turning his back on people in Saguenay who need a navigable waterway that is actually navigable? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Mr. Speaker, of course, we recognize the expertise of the workers at Davie and the Coast Guard's needs when it comes to icebreakers. We are continuing discussions with Davie to address these needs. Of course, I cannot negotiate that on the floor of the House, but I can assure the member that discussions are ongoing. The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, to hear the Liberal ministers this morning, the protection of our borders is an absolute priority for this government. Can the minister explain how his trip to Nigeria is going to solve, for example, the problem of Honduran or Salvadorian asylum seekers coming from the United States? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. I am very proud to say that our efforts in the United States, when it came to the Latin American diaspora from Central America, have not represented a higher rate of asylum requests in Canada. Our colleagues and consulates in the United States have done a great deal of work to clearly explain to the members of that diaspora that there are conditions when entering Canada as an asylum seeker. We're doing work on that side, and we have very few asylum seekers from Latin America. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety announced that new facilities would be set up at L'École to mitigate pressure on Quebec's resources. We understand that Ottawa is expecting for irregular asylum seekers to arrive en masse. Their solution is to build an artificial village while waiting for them to eventually set up in Montreal. With the announcement this morning, nothing in all that is going to solve the problem. When is the government going to come up with a real plan to ensure that Quebec's borders are respected? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. We've taken measures, and we're going to take new ones. When they talk about camps of refugees at the border of L'École, it's ridiculous. It's dangerous and irresponsible to make this kind of allegation here in the House of Commons. This is a temporary measure in case there is a higher number of asylum requests. And if we didn't do it, Canadians would call us irresponsible. We're taking the steps that are necessary to be ready for every eventuality and work to diminish the flow into Canada.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Indigenous Services. Last year, an INAN committee report titled Breaking Point, the Suicide Crisis in Indigenous Communities made several recommendations. One recommendation was for the government to increase infrastructure funding to address mental health and substance abuse issues. Tragically, my riding is the highest suicide rate in Canada, and yet there is not one federally funded addictions mental health facility in the entire territory. Will the minister help alleviate this crisis and commit funding for mental health and addictions facilities in Nunavut? Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Minister.
From Nunavut for this important question. As he knows, our government has made unprecedented investments in mental wellness and addictions treatment for Indigenous peoples. In the case of Nunavut, this includes $7.7 million last year in Nunavut for mental wellness and addictions. We have heard the call for a facility, a treatment facility in the territory, and we have funded a feasibility study to that end. We look forward to those results and moving forward on this work.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader is rising on a point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during question period, you rose and you admonished the Minister of Immigration for using derogatory insults at Conservatives. I was shocked, Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Immigration rose immediately thereafter and challenged your opinion, did not heed your ruling, and instead doubled down and hurled the same insult in this House. Mr. Speaker, when you make a ruling, it is to be respected, it is to be listened to, and Mr. Speaker, I think the Minister of Immigration and all Liberals who are now yelling and heckling should heed your ruling when you do make those kinds. So thank you.
Order. I thank the Honourable Opposition House Leader for her suggestion that all members should heed rulings of the Speaker. In this case, the language, there is often derogatory language directed in both directions. And in fact, I must admit that this was not a direct personal attack in this case, and that's generally what's unparliamentary. Right? I talked about what is helpful to order. So there's a difference, and it's not nearly as serious. However, I would prefer members are cautious in their language, and there is, as I said, if derogatory language towards a party were not allowed, if derogatory language toward a party were not allowed, there's an awful lot of questions and answers that wouldn't be permitted. So in fact, that there is a distinction that's important to make between those things. So I would ask members to heed what is said. I wouldn't call that a ruling in this case as opposed